Oh, coming home? Possibly. All right, so it's running. I'm going to create a new, so I'm just going to add a file. And I think it will be, I'm going to call it mileage pi. So we did mileage before, and just like we did the tip before, right? So it's the same thing you've done before. The only difference is we want to do it as a class this time. Does that make sense? So I'm going to create a class, and I'm going to name it mileage. Okay. And, you know, making a class is a lot like making a function. You just use the keyword class and give it a name. By default, or by naming conventions, usually classes are capped. Start with a capital letter. Does that make sense so far? Now, usually there is a def init. And usually in there is self. And then I'm going to pass in, you don't have to pass things in. This is the constructor, but you can. If you want to pass in values to initialize it, you can. And I'm going to pass in miles and gallons. Okay. So do you guys remember the INI is the starting point? And this is 2 underscores. When I was first learning Python, it just drove me nuts because I couldn't figure out what that was. It is 2 underscores, INIT, 2 underscores. There are a couple of methods like that. The other one we'll use in here is string. String is that way too. So inside of def init, I am going to say that self.miles equals miles. Oops, no semicolon. Doing other languages on the side. Self.gallons equals gallons. And I'm also going to initialize another variable that we're not bringing in, just in case we want to use it. I'm going to say self.price. This would be like price per gallon, so I'll spell that out. I'm going to initialize it to 0. And that'll be my initialization. So we pass in miles and gallons. Now the self means that this miles belongs to the class. This one's coming in from outside. It's more disposable. You don't have to name them the same. If it's confusing, you could say mg, and then you could say self.miles equals m and self.gallon equals g, right? You don't have to name them the same. But the self one means it belongs to the class. And the other ones are the variables that are passed in. Does that make sense?
So like whatever's up in the top brackets is what you want to name it.
Well, so this is fairly typical of how they name things, that they name them exactly the same except one is self and one isn't. But there's no rule that it has to be named that way. So if that's confusing to you, which I could see it possibly be, you don't have to name it that way. Because these are the ones coming in from outside, and these are the ones that will be stored internally. So we're just assigning the value that's passed into those 2 variables. In this variable, I'm just assigning a 0 initially. You don't have to initialize it in a way because it would be initialized to 0 anyway. All right, so typically you have some sets and gets too. If you're passing it in here, because if you do an init like this, you have to initialize it by passing in miles and gallons. So I don't see any good reason to do sets for these, but you could do some, you know, like def. You could do some gets, get miles, and I would just, and then you would put self in here. Self drives me a little nuts. It has to be almost everywhere in these. So I'm going to say return self dot miles, lowercase. So all of the only purpose of this function is that if you wanted to just check what your mileage was, you know, if you forgot when you passed it in or something, you could check. You could return your miles. One of the things that a lot of programs have, these are called fields. So the things with the self here, these are fields that belong to the class. They are things that describe the class. So if you're thinking about mileage, you need to know the miles and the gallons. The price is a little more optional. I was just going to do an extra method that says how much does it cost per mile. But that's just, you don't have to do that. That's just the thing. Questions on that? These are called fields. The self here is attaching. It tells what it is. Other languages don't need self. In other languages, if you declare these at the top of the class, they're available. They're just the class variables. They don't need the word self. But in Python, you do need that. And then where I was going with the fields is that it's fairly typical to do gets, which allow you to see the value, and sets that allow you to change the value. Again, in this case, I don't think I need to do sets for miles and gallons because we're passing them in at the beginning. Does that make sense? Does it make sense? Kinda. It takes a while to get the hang of these, and like functions initially, putting things into classes makes things more complicated, right? But when you get a complicated problem, they actually simplify the process. I'm going to do, since we got miles, I'm going to do a same thing with a get gallons. We may never use these, but just to show you. And I'm going to break a space there. And we'll return, oh, not that. Return self dot gallons. If you forget the self, when you run this, it'll give you an error that says it doesn't know what gallons is. Right? So those are just so a user of this class could get those values back if they want to see them. Now the price we didn't turn in, so the price I need a set and a get. So I'm going to set price per gallon, and I'm going to pass in the price, and I'm going to say, oops, put a colon there. Price or self. I need a self there too. Self price per gallon equals price. So in this case, you pass in the price, and it will set the value. And I'm doing that because I'm considering it optional. If you want just your gallon mileage, you don't need to know what the price is. And then I'll do get price per gallon. And I will do self. And then this one just returns. All right. So those are our gets and setters. There's a property of classes called encapsulation, which says basically you should only allow internal variables to be accessed through methods. And again, you don't need to have a method for every internal variable if it's not needed on the outside. So setters and getters. This is true not just of Python, it's true of every object-oriented language. There you have setters and getters. True of C#, it's true of Java.
I'm so sorry, but can you explain again why the third one is different than the next one? Like the self.price per gallon, because you don't have a return.
Right. Well, this one isn't a get; it's a set.
Oh, okay.
So we're allowing the user of this class to assign this value here. They will pass in the price that they want to use, and then we will assign that price to this internal variable. Gets allow somebody using this class to see the value, and you don't have to allow them to see the value, but you can, you can do the gets to do that. And sets allow the user of the class to change the value. You want the technical terms, these are assessors and this is a mutator. Because it allows you to change. Mutator because it allows you to change. I think the book, which I didn't bring with me today, talks about setters. It talks about assessors and mutators in those terms. And again, these are parts of object-oriented programming in general. They're not unique to Python. The only thing unique to Python is the need to pass self to all of them. So, questions on those? Then I'm just going to do two more methods. One will be to calculate the miles per gallon and return it, and then the other one will be the cost per mile. Although we could probably ignore that one. And it actually shouldn't make this too complicated. It's just meant to be a night show you the feel of a class again. So let's do miles per gallon. So I'm going to do def, I'll call it calculate MPH. And then I will pass it self also. Yeah, calculate All right. So basically, it's just miles divided by gallons. So we'll just do self miles divided by self gallons. Couple of other things. Notice I'm not doing any printouts here. When I write a class, I prefer, unless it's a display class, I prefer that there's no prints, no outputs. And the reason why I do that is because if you did this class and you did it really well, you could use it with a Tkinter form if you want. You could use it with a web page if you wanted. You could use it with a console if you wanted. It's agnostic about how it's displayed. If you start putting prints and things in there, the class is only usable in a console. Right? So I don't do that. I let the display, whatever means of display you want to use, determine how you're going to display it. So we return the values, and then the display class, whether it's a web page or a form or whatever, determines how to show it. I will return a string because strings are, that's one of the other things we'll do. But a string is just, again, it doesn't say how it's going to be displayed. You can display it however you want. So I am going to I'm going to say calculate price per mile. I'm going to do a little quick if. If price, self price per gallon not equal 0. I'm going to do another thing. I'm going to do result equals 0. And then I'm going to here say, so if the price per gallon does not equal 0, then we're going to do, I think how would we calculate this? Is it the price per gallon divided by miles? My brain just went blank. It shouldn't be that hard of a calculation. But I was thinking, so if you've you have mileage, but do we need the mileage to calculate this? We do not need. We need to know. So we had to get $20 worth of gas, and we went 400 miles. So the price per mile.
It's kind of divide by miles times price.
Is it miles times? It wouldn't be times the price.
Miles divided by.
I think it'd be either miles divided by the price or price divided by miles. It's one of those two.
If it would be price divided by miles, you get the point.
You're right. It could be. I mean, it could cost you.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be price per gallon, self price per gallon. Isn't it good I'm not teaching math? So we'll do price per gallon divided by self.miles. Actually, that's price per gallon. So we need actually to know the total price. So I think you're right. It would be, so let's do, I'm just going to call it cost. I don't even know if I need to do cost equals self price per gallon times miles, right? Or times gallons. We need to know what the total is, right? And then we could do result equals self or equals cost divided by self miles. Okay, and then I'm going to return result. All right, that may or may not work. That's more complicated than I actually intended. So I'm setting the result to 0. I don't like to do multiple returns, although there's no law against it. Like I could say, if this is true, do a return, otherwise return 0. You could do that. But I'd like to do a single return. So I set the result here, and then I set the result of the calculation to that variable. And then we're just going to return that variable. If this is true, if the price per gallon is not equal to 0, then it will do the calculation. Otherwise, it'll just return the initial 0. One last thing I'm going to do in this class. If you're going to do Django with models, database models, you need to do this one a lot. So I'm going to do def string str underscore underscore and then self. So what this is we're going to return a string for the class. By default, if you don't do this, if you just say print class and you put the class name in the print, it'll just print the name of the class. That's the default behavior of the string method. But you can, this is one of the few times when you can overwrite that and you can make it say something else. So when I do the string, I'm going to say return, I'm going to, let's do, I think I need to do this, string self miles, and then I'm going to do plus miles. Actually, what do I want to do? Maybe I just want to do the I'm just trying to think of, so let's do plus. String gallons and we'll do plus gallons. So we'll just return the number, and this one needs a self in front of it. All right, so we're just going to go away. We're just going to return the miles and the gallons. We don't know that they've called the calculation for the mileage yet, but we could call it here, but I won't. That's me. I don't know who it is, but I don't get phone calls, so I can forget to silence it. And lately, when I do get a call, it's just they've got my number at some advertisers, I think. All right, so this is just a two-string. It's a good idea to have a two-string, a string function. So that's the class. Let's walk through it, and then what we'll do is we'll make a display class, and then we'll run it. And I'll post these, and you can look at them and work on the assignment. We'll work on your one in a moment too. So we created a class called mileage. We passed in the initialization miles and gallons. So we did that, and we also added a price per gallon. So we assigned the values that we passed in, and then we also assigned an initial value for that. We have gets so that we can show those values if we want. If we need to return those. And then we have a set for the price per gallon and a get for the price per gallon. We calculate the miles. That says miles per hour. That should be miles per gallon. Let's put a G there. And then we also have one calculate the price per mile. Not 100% sure of that, but I think that'll work. I didn't need to do cost as a self variable because it's only local to this thing for calculations. It doesn't have to be seen in other methods. So I didn't need to declare it as self. Same with result, it's only here. It doesn't need to have a class designation with the self. If you did a self there, it wouldn't hurt anything, but you don't need to do that. And then we did a string method that just returns the miles and the gallons. Probably could have done that easier by just calling the get methods, or this, yeah, but that's all right.
So when you run it, are you going to prompt it to put in?
So if I run it right now, nothing will happen. Yeah.
In the calculate price per mile, do you need an else for that if?
I don't. You could put an else, but basically, I put this is my else, right? If the result is set to 0. So there's a couple of ways you could do this. You could do this, or you could say, and then you could say else result equals 0. But since I already set it to 0, this will only happen if it's not 0. Any other situation it'll return at 0. You could do other things in there. I mean, basically, one reason I don't want to do a calculation if it's 0 is that there would be a division by, well, it wouldn't be a division by 0. It would be 0 divided by something, which is a non-operation also. All right, so I saved this. I saved mileage. All right, so I'm going to make a new class. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to do it as a new file. You can have multiple classes in a single file, but logically it kind of makes sense if you're going to use them as chunks to keep them in separate files, right? Because this mileage class could be used wherever you need to calculate mileage, whatever kind of program it is. So I'm going to create a display class. I'm going to call it display.py. And one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to import our, let's say, from mileage. When I did mileage, did I capitalize it or? So we got an original cast, but I think it's mileage, right? Mileage pi from mileage import mileage. All right, so we need to get the other class so that we can use it. All right, so we're importing it. You don't have to do that if they're in the same file, but you do if you create separate files. Yeah.
Question for you. So I always put the in my phone,
Yeah.
so it's not like pulling up. It should pull up though, no matter what you named it, right?
Well, but you have to. This has to be the name of the file
Right. But I
minus the .pub. So if you did yours, you would have to say import from.
Well,
So that should be okay.
what is it? Start something.
But is your class name file?
11 to 602.
Right, but that's your file. But inside of it, your class. So you just called it mileage. So right there, just change that part B. This part is mileage. The capital. So hopefully that'll work. The other thing is, in order to import a class that you make, you need an empty file called init.py. It just has to be in the directory. So it's underscore underscore init underscore underscore .py. If you don't have that file in your directory, it won't import. Don't know why. Took me hours to figure this out at one time. Why isn't it importing? In order for you to be able to import it, basically what it does is it initializes the directory as a resource for Python. There's nothing in this file. It is utterly empty. It's just ini underscore underscore init underscore underscore .py. And it won't let you import without that in there. So I'm going to do class display. I'm going to try to break this into methods. You can have an ini, but I'm not going to this time. I'm just going to say so let's do like def get, what do we want to call it? Get mileage, get info. I'm going to put a self in there. Excuse me. Now this one is, the display is specific. This one is going to be just for console. So I'm going to use, I'm going to say miles equals input. So probably, let's do eval. Don't like eval, but let's do it. Input. And let's do self.miles. Enter the total miles. If we wanted to do get miles, we could do this. Let's do that. So we've got miles. And then we could do one, and let's do return self.miles. All right, and then we'll do another one for get gallons. And we'll do a self in there. Self dot gallons equals eval input, enter the total gallons, and then we will return self gallons. Self dot. All right. Does that make sense? We've done this before, breaking things up. We're just going to get those. And then I'm going to I guess I could do this as break this up, but I think I'm just going to say miles per gallon. Self. I'm going to say so we'll say probably miles. And we could do this as self or not, it doesn't matter. So we're going to say that it equals get miles. And self gallons equals get gallons. All right. I'm going to make a class. What do I want to call it? We need a local instance of the mileage class. This is actually not atypical, but I'm not sure it's a good idea. Mileage equals mileage, and we want to pass in the miles and gallons. So that initializes the class, right? And we're passing out we're initializing mileage. We're giving it the miles and the gallons because it requires that in its INI file, right? And this is the local instance.
That's what we're calling the class.
This is the first time we're calling the class, yeah. So we're initializing the class. You have to create a variable to store it, and if you don't want to name it, this looks the same but it's just a lowercase.
Yeah.
You could call it something else. I just couldn't think of what to call it. And again, you'll see this a lot. Uppercase is the class. This is the instance variable for it. Does that make sense? So this is going to be an instance of mileage. We've passed in the miles and the gallons that we got from our input. And then the MPH, and I'm going to do this as self.mph is equal to, and actually I probably didn't need to return these because they're self. They're visible everywhere, so I probably didn't need to return them. I could have just used them. Does that make sense? I'm used to returning them, but I didn't have to.
Is that the purpose of self?
Self means it belongs to the whole. So if I did away with the returns here, it would still be fine. Do you want me to do that?
No, it's okay. I'm just.
Because self means that it's visible to the whole class. So since I've assigned it there, this would work. And this would be much simpler because I could comment these out too and just do self.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was wondering.
That makes life easier, so I think we should probably do it that way. I'll leave those commented in for right now as the alternate, what I was doing. But yeah, you don't need to do that because basically what self means is that they're available to all the class, all the things. They belong to the whole class. So if I do self MPH, and you can declare, this is actually different than any other language that I know too. You can declare a class level variable anywhere. In other languages, they all have to be declared at the top, or not in a method. Yeah.
It's like essentially all self is class.
It designates it as belonging to the class level variable. So I'm going to do self MPH. Keep saying MPH. MPG equals mileage, which is our local instance, the lowercase one, dot get price per. So we want to not calculate price per mile. Calculate the miles per gallon. There we go. Now mileage, I'm not sure. I think I might want to do self on that one too. And then we'll come down here. We don't necessarily need to do this, but I'll do def get price per mile. And I'll do self. So we'll do self dot mileage. We need to assign this to something. I'm going to say price. So let's do price equals eval input. Enter the price per gallon. And then I will say so we'll say price per mile, ppm, equals self dot mileage dot get price per gallon, and we'll pass in the price. Actually, we need to. I think what we need to do is actually just set price per gallon price, and then we need to do. So we don't need that yet. And then we can do PP. Oh, I need to do self dot. Then I can do a dot, and then we can get calculate price per mile. That's complicated, I know. So what we did is we used the set in order to set the price, and then we did the called to calculate price per mile. And then the last thing I'm going to do here is just to print it all out. So I'll just do a def, just print it all out, whatever. So I'm going to do like def. I'm going to call it like display answers. I'm wondering, so I'm thinking of what order do I need to call these in? So I'm going to call get miles, get gallons. I probably need to self get miles. Do I need to do that? I'm trying to remember if I need self for the methods. I don't think I do. I think, yeah, probably. Seems like that's one of the things about why.
I term add self automatically to everything.
It does, okay. So I'm going to do get miles, get gallons. The get miles, did that have a capital M? Yes, it did. And then I want to, so we've got that. So I'm going to call get price per mile. Probably get price per mile should be broken up into two methods. One to get the value and one to calculate it, but I'm going to leave it. Okay, so we've called everything, right? We've got get that, and then we'll do. So I'm going to do, I guess, yeah, price per mile. We calculated that. We haven't called get
At the bottom,
MP.
you forgot bird.
I got what?
It just says get price mile. Was that intentional?
Oh, no, it's not intentional. Thank you. I'm just deciding whether I want to. So let's do print and I should be able to call self dot get MPG. I have to put that in a string. I don't think I do. And this one would be just ppm. If that'll work. This is the ppm up here, right?
Self PPM?
It would indeed. Good call. Now, miles per gallon, we have self MPG. So if I called that, this may or may not work as is. I might have to call it and then use the variable, but it should work. Now, so in the display to walk through it, I made it again more complicated than it maybe needs to be. But I made a method for us to enter the miles, enter the gallons. Then we initialize our mileage class and pass the miles and gallons to it. All right, and then I have one where it then it calculates the miles per gallon. And then I have this where it we enter the price per gallon, and then it will do the calculation of the price per mile. And then I have a display. And again, a couple of these could be broken up even more because they're doing more. They're actually doing kind of like two things. Ideally, a method should really only do one thing. This one is basically it's going to call the other and then display the answers. So when I do a main, I will do a main that just calls this method in this class. Does that make sense? I will do the main down here, although it could be in another file. You want me to do it as a third file or no? Okay. So I'm just going to come down here, go all the way over to the edge, and I'm going to do a def main. And this one doesn't need a self because it's just a regular method def main. And I'm going to initialize display equals display, right? Parentheses, I presume. And then I'm going to do display dot display answers. And then I'm going to call main. So no guarantees that there's not issues with this, but so we created two classes, right? We created the mileage class and we imported it for this one. And then we created the display class. And then we're going to have main, which initializes the display class and calls the method that basically calls everything else, if it works. Shall we try it? I'm going to bring up my PowerShell a little higher for this. I'll put it back down in a moment. So I do F5 and enter the total miles. That's a good sign. So let's do like 398. Although it's a good idea.
How do you
When-
get it to connect from the miles page if it just says that they're doing?
From the miles.
Because you know how that was a different file.
Right. So at the very top, I don't know if it'll let me. I did from mileage import.
Yeah, I have it exactly the same. Oh,
The other thing, which I'll show you again in a moment, is you have to have an INI. Did it work?
Yeah.
Okay. So I did 396 down here for the miles. When you're testing these, it's actually a good idea to do something where you can calculate it in your head so you can compare. Make sure you didn't screw up, but I didn't. Total gallons, 18. Price per gallon, it's about 3, oh, whatever. And then I failed. So what did it not like? Line 35. On main it failed? No, on this. Where did it fail? Did anybody see?
I thought it was display answers.
So why did it fail on that? Was it here?
When you tried to call the function at the bottom,
Right, this one?
farther down. Yeah, it filled on display answers.
Right, although it may be that it failed because something in here. Let's try. I mean, that might have been the problem. Try it again. So I'm down here again. Enter total miles. Let's do 400. Let's do 20. Price per gallon, 3. Still fails. but it
Oh,
doesn't.
there was more.
Line 36, line 34. Those aren't the line numbers that are there, though. Doesn't like mileage. Oh, you know why? Anything else? Anywhere else? See if that's it.
Which,
I left out a self in front of a mileage.
oh,
So I'm going to do it clear up there. All right. So we'll try it again. All right. So 420. Price per gallon, $3. Still fails. Third place. MPG equals self get MPG. Why is that? Oh, come on, give me an error message. Oh, right. Um, well, we've already calculated it, right? Let me look. All right, go away. So we got get MPG, which is what calculates it, but it doesn't return anything. What I want is self MPG. So actually, I don't need that. I just need self get MPG, and then this needs to be self. So we call the method and then get the value from it. Should work. All right. Third, is this a fourth? Third, fourth try? Still fails. Line 36, same thing. That's not where it's failed, though, is it? Mileage again. Self mileage. Yes, it does.
It doesn't need a return.
What?
It doesn't need to return the value.
It should, the value should be set. Display object has no attribute mileage. So let's look at that again. Is there any place else that I didn't do? Self mileage, self mileage, self mileage equals mileage. That actually should be fine. Why is that not? My goal was not to troubleshoot in front of you guys here. It's just, so it says display doesn't have mileage. So from mileage, import mileage. This should be it. Self.mileage equals mileage. I'm
You
just,
print mileage at the top. And just troubleshoot it to see if it
you,
comes
what,
out correctly. Or display.
you mean just do mileage by itself?
Yeah, just to make sure that like it's coming across.
I think it is. I think it's not recognizing. Somewhere in here, it's not recognizing the mileage, though. I'm not sure why. Because I can't really declare it. I mean, I could do an INI. Where I call these. Let's try that. And then it's a second underscore. So I'm not going to do this, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to change the things that happen here. I'm going to so I'm initializing them at the top of the class. I don't think I've done this before, and you don't have to do this, so I'm not sure why. All right, so we've initialized this from the beginning. And then down here where I do that, I need to not do those. I get them up in the initialization. And then, so this would initialize it, and then this should call that. I don't know if that'll fix it or not. If it does, I'll walk through it. If it doesn't,
Sorry, we did answers.
no, I didn't like that. Oh, because I left out a period. So I moved things up. As I said, before I have you do this, let me make sure it works. Because it seems weird to me that I would have to do that. Still failed, so it's still having a problem with display answers. Does anybody see something that I'm doing that doesn't? Is that in mileage that the error is? Cost, self-price per gallon.
Oh, is it a data type issue where it, needs
It
to
might
be
be
or floated?
for int and none type. Does result need to be or set it to be? I think that's a different error, actually. That'll make it a float.
What about the inputs where you have eval? Will those automatically?
It should automatically.
I know the book says not to use eval unless you absolutely have to.
Right, and I did it because I thought if it was entered as an integer, but it may be making a mistake. So maybe I should just do those as floats. Is yours working? Oh, you tried it?
Yes, so I did the card class.
Yeah. We'll do the card class in just a moment. right, so let's save everything. File. Save all. We'll see if it works again. I've done this 100 times without having problems, and I'm not sure why today I have problems. So now it's back to it's not a, well, let's see. Mileage calculate. Unsupported operand type for float and none type. What does that mean? Where is that? It's not getting a value. Cost self per gallon times self gallons.
What's the price per gallon?
I wonder if I need to do that as, or put a float in front of it. It's not liking my types. I could put float in front of them. But let's see what happens. But just change that to 0.0. I have to go back to this one to run that. So if I do total miles as 400, I'm going to do a 0.0. Total gallons is 20.0. Enter the price per gallon, 3.00. Still fails. And it's still failing on the type. So,
What if you replace self.gallons with just any value and see what happens? Just one.
Just like put a 1
Just
there.
yeah, just
We could also just ignore that calculation, but that's all right, so if I do F5, so the price will be wrong. So I have to go on my display.
Oh, it looks like the none type is the type of function that doesn't return anything.
Oh,
So maybe if you aren't returning some of the values, then that might cause it to be a none type.
so it maybe does need to return even though it's a self.
Yeah, that might be it. I'm not sure though.
I don't know. I might have to look at this again. I don't want to spend the whole day troubleshooting this with you guys. Still fails, but I think I need another return probably. Get miles is not defined. Where is it that get miles is not defined? Get gallons. Is that, did I spell that differently? Oh, you know what? Get gallons here. Is that mileage get gallons? Self gallons equals get gallon equals self dot get gallons.
I think there's also an error up above for get miles or something.
I probably did exactly the same thing. All right. Self dot get, see, self dot. I keep forgetting all the self dots.
There's
That's
a
why
lot of them.
That may have been it more than the returns, actually. All right, last try. This doesn't work. We'll move on. And I will fix it and then do it later. Total miles. Why is it doing it again? I recalled it because of the INI. So I did it in the I've got it because I added those selfs back in there. So these two actually, we could leave the return, but I'm going to comment these out and see if that's the problem again. If it is, maybe what I'll want to do is get rid of them up here. The only good news I'll tell you is that this is not atypical, although my brain is obviously not working today. Hey, it worked. So all of that was because I left out a self.
There's like that, they were so annoying.
Yeah.
I show them for you every time. It's great.
So it can happen that, I mean, it's real easy to make a little mistake like that. It can be really hard to find, especially when you're, I was looking at most everything, but I left out a couple of selves that needed to be added. So I am not sure.
You just keep scrolling down.
Yeah, so a couple of things that I did, and you don't necessarily have to do this, although this isn't a bad idea. So I added the initial. This is part of my troubleshooting. So I called get miles and get gallons down here to get the values so that I could initialize the mileage. Because it was saying that it didn't see the mileage later, and I'm not sure why. I think again it was probably in this cell. But this way I've initialized the mileage class in the initialization of the display. So I think that works. You pretty well have to put self on everything. I don't think you need the returns here, but I'm going to leave them because we didn't actually use the return.
Go down.
Further. So I commented these out. One reason I commented these out is because I did them already in the initial INIT, right? I already called these two there. So column here, that's why when I went down there and I was testing and it started over again, that's because I had called those two methods again. Now this reinitializes the mileage, and I shouldn't need to do that.
And did you change all the evals to float then?
I did. I'll go back there too. The other thing I'll do is this should work without doing that. This should work with that canceled out too. Because I did all three of these up in the initialization. So it shouldn't have to do it down here again. It doesn't make any difference because I just reinitialize it with the same values. But it doesn't need to be reinitialized.
Mine just does the gallons, total gallons and price per gallon twice, and then fix it.
Right, it did that because I set that up to some extent by messing around. If you're totally lost, I totally understand. Because I was, troubleshooting is.
Can you leave it at price per mile? Okay, sorry.
So what I'll do is I'll walk through both of them real quick, and I'll post them both, and you can look at them. What you have to do is actually much simpler than this. Just take the tip one and turn it from functions into a class. If you want to do a display class, you can. If you just want to display it in name, you can do that too.
Scroll.
I will. So the display answers gets the price per mile, gets the mile per gallon up above, and then it prints those out. So the price was about what, 7 cents a mile? That's probably about right. 7.5 cents a mile. What?
All the code is right online. But for mileage, we use 5%.
So in the mileage, let me walk. Well, I just closed it. I didn't want to do that. Let's go to mileage. So here's mileage pi. So a couple of things that I did. I didn't do a lot here. I'm not sure I made any changes in mileage, did I? No, I didn't make any changes to mileage. So I just did, we get those initial things. I set the initial price per gallon to 0. We have the gets, so we can get those values back if we want to see them. We have the set price per gallon, that one we called. And we have the get price per gallon, which we didn't really call that. So we did the set. We calculated the miles per gallon and we calculated the price per mile. The only thing, so this isn't accurate, right? This is where it actually ran once we, I don't know if this is the problem or not. So we wanted to divide it by self dot miles, right? And we could do self dot get miles if we wanted, but it should work this way. Oh, no, self dot gallons. All right, because otherwise, that's why I think this was wrong. All right, last try. I'm going to run it one more time, just make sure that that isn't still an error. And then I'll post it. We'll do the other thing and we will. So I'm just going to run it. Hopefully everything will run smoothly. 423. So it is working now. And that's more accurate, 15 cents a mile. So I will post these so that you can go over, because with all that troubleshooting, I was lost. So I would expect you to be lost. The gist of this, all that I really want you to remember is a little bit, so we have a mileage class. You can break things up into classes. The mileage class just handles calculating mileage. And I also did the price per mile in there. The display class uses the mileage class. I just wanted to show how you can use a class and you can initialize it. And then you can use methods from that class. So when we come down here, we do mileage dot calculate MPG and mileage dot set price per gallon, mileage dot calculate price per mile. So we're using that class we created. And the class is agnostic in terms of display. So you could use it with a web form. You could use it with a, Tkinter form or whatever. That was way more messy than I meant it to be, though. I wanted to do it nice and cleanly so it made sense when you looked at it. Other questions before I move on and we'll do the card, which you've already done. Yeah. So you must have called it. So you're calling it plus. So you're calling it here.
all air.
Get miles, get down. Those two. And the other one, too.
Can you just, run it so that
Yeah. So let's go to the. So, let's see there. Oh, I know. Go to the file. And, where it says Python program.
One of the
So that was
great prices you got.
Is this where your mileage is?
Yeah, it's okay.
That's what price.
Oh, so pace is very important. Camel pace, and then this here is just.
So make it lower.
Try it. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Go to this one.
Unless it's this is how we do it, this is how
No.
Well, not mileage on this.
Oh.
So let's go back to 10 miles. Is it, do you have MPH here? Same thing on. Nice. Yeah.
Cause he was switching back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, good catch.
Yeah. Yeah, it's frustrating sometimes.
Yeah. I was
So I did exactly. I'm just curious.
So
First, you gotta grab the chocolate and sell that. You'd be like, I heard that.
Just to see if it is. Oh, you know what? Although this might, so each of these needs a cell. might need, I think that might be. Excellent.
You copy paste it.
And
Mileage and.
all right, I want to do one other thing here in a minute. And they're all together.
Yes, it is.
I don't see- it's not any specific.
Oh,
I'll take it. I don't know. Yeah, sure. I'm gonna, as I said, I'm gonna post this in 1 second, but let's look at the peer exercise, do it real quickly, and then obviously Wednesday will be some time to work on things. So if I go to Canvas, it's Canvas Seattle Central, right?
forgot to put stuff.
Yeah. The selves are a big pain. All right, so let's go in here. If we go down to the peer, so assignments. So what we'll do, this is the very last peer assignment. And it basically says that it just wants to create a card class, like a playing card. And it should have an initial constructor that takes 3 arguments: the self, they always take the self, the rank, and the suit, right? So the rank is the number. And one of the things you want to do, so like every suit has 13 numbers, right? Because if you count the ace through 10 are the numbers, and then you have the joker, queen, and king. So 13. There's 13 numbers in each suit. So the rank values between 1 and 13. The suit is a character. I'm just going to say D, C, H, or S. One for diamonds, clubs, hearts, or spades. If you want to pass it in Word, you can. And it should have the following methods. So get rank, get suit, and then the value of the self. And then a string that returns the name of the card, and then a string method. So give it a shot, and then we'll go over it. So it's just designing a card. If you design this card properly, you can use it in any card game you want. Other things you could do with the card, if you were doing it for real, is you might have a path to the picture of the card, right? So that you actually have a graphical picture of the card possible. So let's give it, we've got let's give it like 10 minutes or 15, and then we'll go over it. I might just go to where I think I have a copy of it somewhere. Yeah. All right, so what is the error? Okay, so here's the- so let's look at my, here, my, so you have, so the difference is, this one has a low frequency. So if we make it match, so that it's just, yeah, look at the character. I saw your problem, I can't see it so much. You doing okay?
The last one, yeah.
Okay.
Trying to process how you change it.
So it's just, think about like our mileage class. So when you do,
Creating different types of cards.
well, so you're creating a generic card, right? And then the card class isn't a particular card, but then you can pass in values. So you could pass in, if it was the three, you could say if it was a three of spades, you pass in the value of three. You pass in the, what did I say, this is spades, that's for spades. And, that's actually, so if we just the value, the rank in the suit, so the rank is 1 through 13, the suit is whatever.
So like class, card,
Right.
definite, so,
Right.
and then I feel like self rank.
If you look at the mileage class, it's a little closer. It's see how it passes in mileage. You can see passing in rank. Suit.
Okay.
I'll be right back. Go right back. I'm just getting my. So we'll give it a couple more minutes. I don't necessarily expect you to get it done. We'll just walk through it. Do this started and we'll do it. And I'm not going to code it in front of you. I pre-coded it, so I'm just going to walk through it. That way I'll confuse you less, maybe.
Mine's slightly on the right side here, because I may have to give it a value between 1 and 13. But it'd be like,
So the value be coming through the rank, I think, is actually the same.
for that one.
Yeah, that's actually it.
You wouldn't do like a rank equals.
In like layman's terms, like, I'm not really familiar with cards. What is that?
I guess rank might be, what is rank? Rank is a value between, what is the value difference between,
The value is the like the numeric value, and then I think rank is the numeric value and the like king or queen.
king or queen?
I think kind of the idea. So
Yeah.
an ace is like a 1. The value of an ace is a 1. And the rank is maybe.
Maybe, yeah, I'm just thinking, looking at that, because I think I copied it from the, because I'm not sure if I used the rank. I think that the idea of the rank, though, is like it's a king or something. Well, rank, it says, is a value between 1 and 13. So I'm not sure what the value. Oh, the value is different than the rank because the king is only worth 10 even though it's 13, right, as a card.
Oh yeah. So like a king's rank would be 13 and the value would be 10.
Yeah. That could change with different games, but yeah. I think that's the idea because no card is worth more than 10. It depends on the game you're playing, actually. But you could initialize it with whatever.
I guess it's like the last example, it was easier to understand. The intuitive of what we're trying to do. That's-
Well, I'll show it here in a second, and maybe we can. Maybe I'll show it. Let's give it like at 11:45. We'll go over it, and that'll get us through the day here. as I said, once you've got this, I also have, and I'll share it with you. I won't make you do it, but I also have a deck class where you can populate it with like 52 cards, and then you can deal out of it. You can shuffle and deal out of it. And if you do that, you've got the basis for all your card games. You can just calculate the rules. So yeah, 3 more minutes and we'll go over it. I don't expect you to have it done by then. If you just get started, that's good. The hard part is the string method. Looks like you did fine. So it would start out a lot like the mileage class with the INI.
If you do it like self dot rank equals like.
Well, we'll get it in there. You just I'll show you it and I'll show you how to use it. And then the deck will wait. One more minute and I'll show. Just noticing my clock on my computer is different than that clock by about 2 minutes. All right, so I loaded, let's go here. So my card. And then what I'll do is I'll make just a main and run it in a minute. So class card, right? You guys probably have that. Most of you seem to be on this line. You do it in the self. You always have self. I did rank and suit. I set the value to 0. I didn't insert the value like the other one did. Because I figured that depending on the rank and suit, I'd set the value later, but you could have a comma value up here, which would probably be more the way the book had it. That makes sense? So we bring these in, we just say that self rank equals rank, self suit equals suit. And then I did the value is equal to 0 at this point. And then I have a get rank, right? And a get suit and a get value. And I said if, this is where I set the value. If self.rank is greater than 10, then the value is 10. Otherwise, it's worth whatever the value is equal to the rank. So if the rank was 7, then the value is 7. If the rank is 13, then the value is 10. That's how I did that. But you could just enter though. You don't have to do that kind of calculation. You could just enter it, right? You could just enter it at the top. Does that make sense so far? So those are the values. And then I did a method to determine the suit. So I'm just having them enter D for diamonds, H for hearts, S for spades, and C for clubs.
Is this up on your blog or?
It is on the blog if you look, and I'm going to post it again. It's also in my GitHub.
Oh, that's what I meant.
Yeah. So this is just a thing, a method I did to turn the H into hearts, the S into spades, just for display. Again, that's extra. You don't necessarily have to do that. And then my string, I said if the rank is greater than 1 and less than 11, then the name is equal to the rank. So the rank, say 7 of, and then I said self gets suit. So if it's if it's a C, it'll say 7 of clubs. If it's an H, it'll say 7 of hearts. Right, my method up above with the get suit, where it changes the letter into a word. If the rank is 1, right, so this is if it's greater than 1 and less than 11, so it's 2 through 10. And this one, if it's equal to 1, then it's the ace of and whatever suit. If it is an 11, it's the jack of and whatever suit. And if it's a 12, it's the queen of and whatever suit. And then if it's 13, it's the king of and whatever suit. So let's just try it. I'm just going to do it in the same file here. So I'll do def main, and I'll say card equals card, and then I have to say what suit I want to enter. What do we want? Let's do like a, so we need the rank 12 and H. All right, and then I'm going to just print card. That'll print the string method of it, and then I'll call main. Okay, so if I press F5 here, oh, now H is not defined. What? What does it mean H is not defined? Oh, you know what? I know why. Anybody know why that is? Have to enter it as a character. There it's the Queen of Hearts. So down here, the Queen of Hearts. If I change this and do, say, 9 and S, it'll be the 9 of spades.
And you're putting whatever number you want.
Yeah, I'm just putting whatever number I want. So I shouldn't show you, but since the quarter is almost over, in my GitHub, there is a list of pretty much all the programs we've done and more.
You go in your GitHub.
Yeah, it's a GitHub SP Conger, and then there's a repository called ITC 110 Python programs.
Is it the one card class?
Yeah, it's a card class. So if you look at card class, so there's a couple. I actually just uploaded what was ever in my thing, so it's not a string extremely edited. There's also like a deck class. Notice it imports card and it imports random, and basically it goes through and it has an initial where it gives you the suits, the cards, an initialized deck. It goes through and basically does for range 1, it does 4 suits, right? It sets the suit, does another loop where, so it goes through and sets all the hearts, and then all the clubs, and then all the, basically through these. And then for each suit, it goes through and sets the cards 1 through 13, and then it creates the cards and adds them to the list of the deck. Then we can return the deck. This shuffles the deck, and this deals. I'm not sure that deal and shuffle should be in deck. It might be there should be another program, but it's all there if you want to look at it, and we might play with that a little bit. I was playing. That's not necessarily a. So we got. There's also some Tekinter stuff here. Like, and we don't do any Tekinter really in this class, but there's some.
The guessing game ones there.
Yeah, the guessing game is there. That's hard. That's actually a really hard one.
Tried to use the YouTube tutorials,
Uh-huh.
different methods that
The guessing game, I used to use it as a midterm, actually. But because it covers everything we covered up to that point.
that's like about a quarter of the size of what I had.
Well, it depends on how sophisticated you want to be. I mean,
Yeah.
mine just does the guess, says it's greater than or less than, and returns the score. You could get more complicated in the play and things like that.
Well, the part that got me that was hard was how every time I would get it wrong, it has to -1.
Oh. My score actually may not be all that accurate in this city, too. I think I just arbitrarily added one because it was, otherwise you do end up with a negative number
Yeah.
for your score, your last score. So I think I just arbitrarily added one to the score each time just to compensate. But it works. I mean, I can play it. It's not. There are many ways that could be more sophisticated. Also, you should think about. I don't know about with the Pi ones from here, but you should think about starting a GitHub. I'm not going to take it, but I just got an invitation to an interview at Amazon because they said they liked my GitHub. They're looking for somebody to work on Alexa AI. I'm not sure I'd make it beyond the first level or two of the interviews. Secondly, I really don't want to work for Amazon. Although I'd make a lot more money. All right, so if you don't have, I will post this in the blog, and I'll post the other one in the blog. And if you didn't get very far, you can post what you have, or you can post mine up there. Why does it not like that? It's already defined line 12. Oh, yeah. How did that work? All right. That's interesting. I have get suit twice. See if that works. Still works. Weird that it worked before, actually. All right, so to the blog, and to stop the video, this video